There is a whole lot going on here. But I'll start from the start by telling you, Chris Broussard, I believe that Rondo intentionally spat at Chris Paul, at him. They were little spits that did not land, but he did spit at him nonetheless. And I believe that Chris Paul, given his long history of snapping and cheap-shotting opponents, actually exercised great restraint in only trying to poke at Rondo's face in retaliation for that. Now, let me go much deeper, because I did love it and I did appreciate it that Rondo yesterday actually went after Chris Paul's pristine image, because it's the most overrated, oversold, overprotected image in the history of the NBA. Because the truth is that Chris Paul, if you really analyze his history of cheap shotting, he's the dirtiest player of his era, and I can make a case that he's the dirtiest player in the history of the NBA because of his history of cheap shotting opponents below the belt with shots to the groin. And we'll do this in just a minute. We'll go into more depth. I'm going to go through the whole montage, the litany. But as you remember, it started at Wake Forest in the ACC tournament when he took just a blatant below-the-belt shot right into the groin of Julius Hodge and got suspended for a game. And he's carried that on with a blatant attack on Marc Gasol and Kevin Durant and Chris Kaman. I can just go on and on. Just go to YouTube and you can just start looking at them, and the scope and the impact of them just knock you over. This is a dirty basketball player. And yes, I'm talking about the same guy who has starred for years in State Farm commercials where he's the good guy, and the same guy who got elected the president of the Players Association, which is mind-boggling because he does have that good off-the-court side to him. But the truth is, in the end, if you step back from this, the victim of the spitting incident should have been called out, and I'm glad that Rondo went so far as to say everyone wants to believe that Chris Paul is a good guy. Now, he just went to horrible teammate. And a lot of his Clipper teammates, starting with Big Baby Davis, who we've had on the show and is sitting in this seat right here, said that he was a horrible teammate with the Clippers. Rondo has been no angel himself. It's not that he's a bad teammate, he's just difficult to coach.
Or with coaches.
Right?
Exactly.
With coaches.
Right.
But in the end, Chris Paul, because of his twin brother Cliff Paul in the commercials, people start to think that's really Chris. And as a basketball player, that's not really Chris. And he's LeBron's, one of his closest friends. I mean, you could make a case, some people do, that he's the closest of the group to LeBron, right? You know this very well.
Yeah, I think that's a good,
okay.
That's a good possibility.
So that helps him image-wise. And then the players honored him by electing him the president of their association. Well, that's strong stuff. But Rondo, in retaliation, is calling him out for getting a pass from the media, which he does, because all of these things, all the way to the, do you remember the Marc Gasol? So it's the end of a closeout game in the playoffs, Memphis versus Clippers, and Chris Paul just snaps and takes a running start at Marc Gasol and just smashes him right in the groin, just doubles over Marc Gasol. And then he's obviously ejected. The game's over, the series is over. By Joey Crawford, he's ejected. And as he walks off the court, several of the Memphis Grizzlies run, including Zach Randolph, to shake his hand. And I'm thinking, no, you should fight him. He just did that to your teammate. But again, that's the way most players see Chris Paul. And he's getting an incredible pass for this, because I think Rondo's reaction to him was based on all that he's gotten away with in his career, that they're really the same kind of player. They're both undersized battlers, obviously, but they're in different packages, because one can be a difficult teammate, one can be difficult to coach. So in the end, I still believe, and I don't know why Rondo won't take some ownership of little spits. There's something spittle came out of his mouth, right?
Yeah. I'm with you on a lot of that. I tend to side with Rondo more on this. And when I first saw the video before he spoke, there's clearly something that comes out of his mouth. And it looks like he kind of, his jaw, like he sets his mouth to spit.
Little spits.
But he made a convincing argument yesterday. He said, look, and I think what happened was he was talking. First, he had a mouthpiece in, So that makes it tougher.
Okay, but you can spit with a mouthpiece.
It's possible. But it's tougher with a mouthpiece. He was exasperated, to use his words. So if you're fatigued, if you're breathing hard, it's possible that something flies out of your mouth on accident. And that's what I tend to believe, that something flew out on accident, because Chris Paul didn't respond. He reacted like if I was talking to you up close and you accidentally spit and I might wipe something off. You know, he didn't react like,
True.
what are you doing? Like, and Rondo said a point, like, if I just spit on somebody, I'm not doing this and looking away. I'm expecting him to punch me.
He's going to throw down.
Right.
He's
So
going to respond. Yep.
That convinced me that there's no question spit flew on Chris Paul's face.
Are you sure it got on? I don't think it got on his face.
Well, he did wiped his face. So that makes me think it got on his face. And then I think perhaps after they scuffled, LeBron gives Chris Paul, and according to Rondo, did Chris go to a sideline reporter for ESPN and told him he spit on me?
He was yelling he spit on me all the way to the sideline.
See, I'm wondering if at that point Chris understands the ramifications of what just happened. Like, and I know all the players had to be expecting more than 4-3 in 2 games, because the last time it happened in 2006, Carmelo Anthony got 15 games. 15. Another Jared Jeffries get 10.
No, JR and
Nate Robinson,
they both got 10 for they squared off and threw punches.
So Chris may be thinking, as the Players Association president, this could be 10 games, this could be 15 games, whatever, and maybe he starts making an excuse, because I just don't think he reacted like a person that thinks they purposely got spit on.
Okay, I got it. But if you're saying any of the little spittle, I'll just call it spittle, if it landed, does he not have reason to be screaming he spit on me?
Well, if it's accidental, again, if you and I are talking face to face and it's heated, and a little comes out, I can probably tell if you did it on purpose, right?
He wasn't speaking when he was spitting. He was just kind of turning his face to the side, and he was trying to dismiss Chris with little spits. just like, this is what I think of you. And whether it landed or not is debatable. But Chris was angry enough and startled enough that he thought about it for just a second. And then he said, how can I retaliate without getting a 15-game suspension? I'll just poke him in the face. Maybe I can get away with poking because I got to do something. Right. But Rondo's explanation was, then why didn't LeBron or Melo, who were standing close by watching, they didn't react to his little spits, right? Did they not see them? Did they not think it was a big enough deal to react to? Because neither of them jumped in like, oh,
yeah.
Right?
I mean, there's no question spit got on his face.
I don't know about that.
You know, well, again, maybe was he? I don't know if Chris was acting when he did this, but to your other point, okay, about you're right. These guys came out. Ryan Hollins joined Big Baby Davis. Said CP3 was a bad teammate
as a Clipper.
Yeah, I spoke or texted with a Clippers executive yesterday and asked him, "Is Rondo right? What do you think about his comments about Chris Paul being a bad teammate?" He said he was right. You know, so Chris does have that reputation. And he said the reasoning was he's abrasive. When he's on the court, he's directing traffic, telling you go here, go there. And according to him, doesn't take responsibility for his mistakes. He's pointing out all the teammates. You didn't do this, you did that, do this, go here. But then when he messes up, doesn't really take responsibility for it. And so those are some of the reasons that, and I've been told, things teammates have against him. As far as his image, it's interesting. Remember Derek Fisher? And Derek, we had him on my radio show, Rob Parker and I, the other night. Good guy. But he had this pristine image, kind of similar maybe to Chris Paul. You know, he had written a book, and it was in Christian bookstores and all this. Like, he had this pristine image. Okay. Then, when he really had started in Utah, when he left, remember he left there to go to the Lakers, and people said he blamed it on his child's illness, but it really wasn't that. Then he coaches the Knicks and, you know, has all these issues with womanizing and all types of stuff.
Yep, all types of stuff.
That seemed underhanded. So I think that's someone that had a certain image being proven not to be that guy. As far as dirty play, there's no question Chris does some things like that. But again, John Stockton, if you ask players of that era, who was the dirtiest player in the league, you know, a lot of them say John Stockton. I kind of think that's a little guy getting away with what he can. Now, hitting guys in the groin and stuff like that.
Like, I don't remember John Stockton punching anybody in the groin. He was borderline dirty. He was savvy and crafty and clever.
Right.
And he's going to push it into the gray area with elbows and knees and whatever. But can we just run through the montage just for everybody's sake of, here, I think we're seeing him right now. This is the Julius Hodge. Just hit him right in the groin. He just slugged him in the groin. He got a game for that. This is on Anthony Davis. He just dribbles into Anthony's knee, and the next thing we see is Anthony had to be carried off the floor to the locker room after this one. And here's the Chris Kaman. He had just hit him right in the groin, and Chris Kaman just couldn't take it and pushed him back. And you're saying, what is that? You're better than that, Chris Paul. This is just a little shot to Kevin's butt, Kevin Durant. Here, that's on Marc Gasol again. He just goes up and just hits him right in the groin.
We've seen Draymond Green
yeah.
kicking guys. I mean, I've always written Chris's plays like that off. Again, some of them are over the line when you hit a guy in the groin, but I've written it off as a feisty young guy who's just battling. And
he's not just getting pass after pass after pass, because he showed you, he set his historical precedent in the ACC tournament against Julius Hodge. He just cold cocks him right in the groin, just slugged him. And they said, okay, you're out for a game. This is his last run with Wake Forest, his second year there.
Yep.
Okay, so he predicted what he was going to be as an NBA player, but I still say those ads, the State Farm commercials, are so effective that it makes people think subliminally, he's really a good guy, because his twin brother is a great agent, and it came because it's great. They're really good.
Right,
They're effective. They got me.
Even the ones without the twin brother.
Okay, even without him. Right. And now Chris is hanging out with this really nice guy agent, and they're doing all kinds. They're looking at the stars, and they're just hanging out together because they're thick as thieves.
Right,
they're really having a good time.
Right.
Well, after a while, you think that guy's really a good guy. That Chris Paul. Mm-hmm. He doesn't play like a really nice guy. So Rondo is saying the media is giving him a pass. You know, he used the phrase, you're tampering with the evidence because you're giving Chris the pass here. Well, I think that's true, except it's ironic because Chris has become the victim of the spitting, when in fact he has a long history of victimizing a whole lot of opponents, that it just comes and goes and nobody makes any issue of it.